everybody, welcome to our video. This video will compare and contrast the multi-level government between the United States and the United Kingdom. First, we would like to start with the definition of multi-level government.
So, what is multi-level government?
Multi-level government refers to the share of power and responsibilities between different levels of government inside the country and across the quasi-government and non-governmental organizations outside the country. It originated from the studies of European integration. There are two types of power integration: horizontal and vertical integrations. In United States, the government system is a federal republic with a strong president and bicameral legislature. It operates on a system of checks and balances. And for the United Kingdom, the government system is a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, which the monarch serves as the head of state, while the prime minister is the head of government. So, the question is that, why does each state prefer its current state form? Firstly, for the United States prefers its current state form because the governments have to follow the rules or laws that have been set by the Constitution, which state what their duties are and how long their serving times will last. Second, the power of the government is divided between many governmental branches, which prevents the abuse of power by any governmental bodies and makes them work closely with one another. Finally, the citizens have voting power in their hands, which they can use to select the representatives or the president from any political party during the election. And for the United Kingdom prefers its current state form because the monarch acts as the symbol of the country by representing the British people through diplomacy or official duties, which would also remind other people of how powerful the country used to be. Second, the parliament listens to any problems or interests of the citizens, and they will select the prime minister, who acts as the head of government and the monarch's advisor, based on their shared interests with the citizens. Let's move on to another question. What are the relationships between the central government and the sub-central government? When we're talking about the relationship between the central government and the sub-central government, the key thing that we focus on is the power distribution. We focus on how political power is distributed between national and smaller governments. So now let's get to know the relationship between the central and sub-central governments. In the case of the United States, the relationship between the central government, also known as the federal government, and the sub-central government, also known as the state government, is based on the federal system. The Supremacy Clause in Article VI of the Constitution regulates relationships between the federal and state governments by declaring that the Constitution and federal law are the supreme law of the land. This means that if a state law conflicts with a federal law, it cannot be passed. The allocation of power based on the Constitution ensures that both the federal government and the state governments have their own distinct powers and responsibilities, and they operate independently within their own spheres of authority. The federal government has the duty to handle issues that affect the entire country, such as national defense and immigration. The federal government is divided into three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial. On the other hand, state governments are responsible for managing and legislating within their territorial boundaries on matters such as education, transportation, and public safety, even though the state government can create laws within its territory. We have to remember the key point that the law created by the state must never go beyond or conflict with the federal law. Overall, this system in the US allocates the power not to be concentrated in the central government and guarantees the sub-central government to have more independence over their own territory with constitutional constraints. Let's move on to the case of the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, the relationship between the central and sub-central governments is characterized by a unitary system of government. The central government consists of the monarch, the prime minister, the cabinet, the parliament, and the judiciary. The monarch is a ceremonial figurehead. They play a symbolic role in the UK's governance. The monarch's powers are largely symbolic and exercised on the advice of the government. The Prime Minister, the head of government in the UK. The Prime Minister is typically the leader of the political party that has the majority in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister selects the cabinet, sets government policy, represents the UK both domestically and internationally, and oversees the functioning of the government. The cabinet, comprising around 20 ministers who are members of Parliament MPs. The cabinet is responsible for making major policy decisions, coordinating government activities, and overseeing specific government departments. Cabinet ministers are accountable to Parliament and collectively responsible for government decisions. Parliament is a key institution in the UK's political system. It consists of the House of Commons elected representatives and the House of Lords appointed and hereditary members. The judiciary. The UK has a separate judiciary responsible for interpreting and applying the law. The Supreme Court of the United Kingdom serves as the highest court of appeal and plays a crucial role in upholding the rule of law. On the other hand, local governments have very few legislative powers and must act within the framework of laws passed by the central parliament. In most of England, there are two tiers: county and district, with responsibility for services split between the two tiers. County councils cover the entire county area and provide around 80% of the services. Within the county, there are several district councils that cover a smaller area and provide more local services. However, some operate under a single-tier council structure: county councils, district councils, unitary authorities, London boroughs, and metropolitan districts. Overall, this unitary system is centralized, with sub-central units of government controlled by the central government without constitutional limitations. Local government must act within the framework of laws passed by the central parliament. So, what should be centralized and what should be decentralized to lower levels of government? For the United States, what should be centralized to lower government? First of all, the establishment of broad education frameworks and standards would be an ideal priority. For instance, the federal government plays a critical role in setting national education standards and making sure that all students receive a minimum level of education that prepares them for the workforce or higher education. For decentralized, specifically, the one that existed already is the No Child Left Behind Act put a special focus on ensuring that states and schools boost the performance of certain groups of students, such as English language learners, students in special education, and poor and minority children, whose achievement, on average, trails their peers. States did not have to comply with the new requirements, but if they didn't, they risked losing federal Title I money. Furthermore, infrastructure development and maintenance are areas that could benefit from increased local control. There are major differences in transport requirements in cities compared with rural areas. When given the authority over their projects, it means giving them an opportunity to do what works best for them. Cities may therefore opt for expansion projects such as the development of new bus routes, while counties decide to concentrate on the renovation of old paths. The implications of decentralization in this sector may help improve effectiveness, and it resulted in increased resource use, efficiency, and improved infrastructure maintenance. However, we should also consider the challenges when it comes to this. It is only possible to partially decentralize the state. Hence, there will still be a need for centralized oversight on some issues such as management. This means that we need both centralization and decentralization at the same time. It therefore calls for a constitutional agreement on the role of each government within the nation. This would imply that there has to be coordination between them when making decisions related to environmental lawmaking. Also, as far as finances are concerned, there should be better ways through which money is allocated so that one area does not end up becoming richer while others remain poor forever. For the UK, particularly England, is one of the most centralized large countries globally. There are various factors that should be centralized, such as: firstly, defense. Simply, we should focus on a unified and coordinated approach that a centralized military under the federal government allows for a single command structure that ensures all branches, which include the Army, Navy, and Air Force, to work together consistently. Moreover, given the standardization and efficiency of control over the equipment, training or doctrine across the armed forces can also improve the overall military operations as well. Along with a single point of contact for the federal government, it facilitates military alliances and collaboration with other nations on defense matters. Another point to consider is that foreign affairs, diplomatic relations, international treaties, and foreign policy should remain under the purview of the federal government to maintain consistency in international dealings. On the other hand, what should be decentralized for lower levels of government is that the local government are better positioned to manage environmental issues specific to their regions, such as pollution control, conservation efforts, and local climate action plans. And people are likely to participate in initiatives they feel directly impact their environment. Also, local authorities can experiment with different kinds of methods to environmental issues that meet the expectations of the local needs. In addition, they should also have control over education and health within the local context. For example, understanding the specific educational needs and health priorities of their communities can tailor curriculums and services accordingly. It can also lead to greater accountability for education and health outcomes because local communities can hold their local governments responsible for the quality of services provided. Last but not least, working age welfare. Local governments have a better understanding of how specific the needs and challenges faced by working-age individuals in the community. They can enforce a stronger relationship with program recipients that provides personalized support and improves a sense of community responsibility. On top of that, decentralization will lead to a more efficient administration of welfare program as local authorities may have control over resources in the decision-making process. Let's move to another part. How do we ensure that multi-level governance can promote the resulting system as efficiently and as democratic as possible? To ensuring that multi-level governance promotes an efficient and democratic system involves, there are 3 key areas to focus on. Firstly, clear distribution of responsibilities. Secondly, effective communication and coordination. And lastly, public participation and accountability. First, clear division of responsibilities and competencies. In a multi-level governance system, it is crucial to have a clear division of responsibilities and competencies between different levels of government: local, regional, national, and supranational. This clarity helps prevent overlaps, reduces conflicts, and enhances the efficiency of governance by ensuring that each level knows its roles and can focus on its specific areas. For example, in the UK, devolution has granted Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland their own parliaments or assemblies with powers over areas like education, health, and transportation. For example, the Scottish Parliament has the authority to make decisions about its education system, allowing it to tailor policies to the specific needs of Scotland. This devolution ensures that decisions are made closer to the people they affect, enhancing efficiency and responsiveness. Second, the enhanced coordination and cooperation mechanisms. Efficient multi-level governance requires robust coordination and cooperation mechanisms to ensure that policies and initiatives are aligned across different levels of government. This involves regular communication, joint planning, and collaborative decision-making processes to address common challenges and goals. For example, the IISPP employs intergovernmental bodies such as the National Governors Association and the Council of State Governments to facilitate communication and coordination between state and federal governments. For instance, during natural disasters, agencies like the Federal Emergency Management Agency (FEMA) work closely with state and local governments to coordinate response efforts, ensuring timely and effective disaster management. Lastly, the inclusive participation and accountability. For a multi-level governance system to be democratic, it must include mechanisms for inclusive participation and accountability at all levels. Citizens should have opportunities to engage in decision-making processes, and there should be transparent procedures for holding government officials accountable. This ensures that governance remains responsive to the needs and preferences of the populace. For example, the IISPP promotes public participation through mechanisms such as public hearings, town hall meetings, and participatory budgeting. For instance, New York City's participatory budgeting program allows residents to propose and vote on projects funded by the city's budget. Additionally, the Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) ensures transparency by granting citizens access to government records and holding officials accountable for their decisions. For the last part is the suggest future directions of democratic decentralization for each context. For the United States, firstly is the enhanced fiscal autonomy. Revenue generation. States and local governments could be granted more power to generate their own revenue through taxes and other means, reducing dependence on federal funds and increasing local policy innovation. And the block grants. By increased use of block grants with fewer federal restrictions could allow state and local governments more flexibility in addressing local needs. Secondly is the increased state and local powers. Policy experimentation by encouraging states to serve as laboratories of democracy by experimenting with policies in areas like healthcare, education, and climate change could lead to innovative solutions that might be adopted nationally. And decentralization of federal programs. Some federal programs could be decentralized, allowing states and localities to tailor implementation to local conditions. On the other hand, for United Kingdom for future directions of democratic decentralization, firstly, is deeper devolution. By greater legislative power, expanding the legislative powers of the devolved administrations, especially in areas currently reserved to Westminster, could enhance local governance and responsiveness. And English devolution. By implementing devolution within England, possibly through regional assemblies or increased powers for existing local governments, could address regional disparities and improve local governance. Secondly, fiscal decentralization. Through financial independence, by providing devolved administrations and local governments with greater control over taxation and revenue generation could reduce their financial dependence on the central government and increase accountability. And through balanced funding by reforming the funding mechanisms to ensure a more equitable distribution of resources across the UK, taking into account regional needs and disparities.